This wheeler right here is a prime example of why sometimes it pays to bring it to a mechanic. This right here is a 2010 Polaris Sportsman 550. Now this thing's actually in very nice shape, other than obviously you can see the transmission's torn apart. So the current owner of this machine brought it to me. He is not the one that tore it down. He got it this way. He did some trading and got this machine. The original owner of this thing just plowed with it pretty much. It's still got a plow frame on it, got the winch on it. This thing's only got about 1,100 miles on it, maybe a little over 300 hours. So the original owner of this, he was plowing with it or driving it, whatever he was doing. He's having a hard time putting it in gear. Then all of a sudden he couldn't put it in gear at all. He said it was making some bad noises. So what did he do? He started tearing everything apart. Here's half the transmission. He didn't actually take the transmission out of this unit. He ended up pulling half of it off, taking the gears off. So we took it all apart, as you can see. Didn't find anything wrong with it. Couldn't figure it out. The current owner of this brought it to me. Said he didn't feel like messing with it. He looked in the transmission. Couldn't find any bad gears or anything. He said, go ahead and fix it. If we're going to put a transmission in it, put a transmission in it. So I ended up looking at all these gears. Went through the diagram because this is all torn apart. You know, to make sure we weren't missing anything or whatnot. The only thing I was missing was one spring. And the guy that tore this apart said he thought he was missing a spring. So that was accurate. But I looked at the gear set here, the transmission in there. I can't see where there's any problems with that transmission. So I started looking at other stuff. And then I found the problem. This transmission never had to come apart. This right here is the primary clutch. This is what they call a one-way bearing. That one-way bearing gives you your engine braking. So like its name, that one-way bearing, when you roll it one way, it should roll freely. The other way should be locked. You cannot turn it back. Well, this one-way bearing will not move at all. Either way, it is froze in place. So that's what was causing all his problems, because when those one-way bearings go bad, it's going to want to engage that drive belt, which will not allow you to shift unless you shut it off. So if you're having problems shifting when it's running, if you shut it off and you can shift fine, it's most likely you're clutching. Probably that one-way bearing's gone bad. So yeah, this whole transmission never needed to come apart. There was nothing wrong with it. Got that new spring in. I'm putting new seals in it just because it's apart. Might as well put new seals while it's out. And then I got a new one-way bearing for that clutch. After that, this thing should be ready to roll. Now, to do this job, there's two main tools you're going to use. You're going to use the clutch fixture plate to hold this in place. You're also going to need a spider removal tool. These are balanced clutches, so you're going to want to mark them before you take them apart. So I like to put an X here. There's already an X on the bottom of this. Remove the cover. Just like so. You can just remove this limited spacer. Next thing we'll do is throw this in our fixture. It's locked into place there. And we'll grab our spider removal tool. We'll throw it in place. Now in a perfect world, you could just grab a 1-inch breaker bar and break this free. However, most of these are on there very tight, so you can break out the big impact for that. Now before you remove this, you're going to want to check your service manual, because some of these spiders on these clutches are left-hand threads. Some are right-hand threads. Now, like on this Polaris Sportsman 550 and the 850, these are both left-hand threads. Off the top of my head, I believe the 800s, the 500s, those are all right-hand threads. I would always check your service manual, though. Now that we get this loosened, we don't want to just turn this all the way. These little buttons will fall out. So you want to hold the bottom of this clutch and then twist it off. Just like so. We can remove our spacer. These are little fiber washers. You're going to want to buy new ones. This is your one-way bearing. I guess she's moving a little. Yeah, she's stuck on there pretty good. There we go. So I'll make sure this is good and clean. Once you get this surface all cleaned up, first comes a new washer. I'm going to go ahead and install the one-way bearing here. This just goes on there, just like so. And you can remove that plastic cover. As you can see, we're spinning and we're locked one way, spinning freely the other, locked, spin. You absolutely want to make sure that you put your one-way bearing on the right way. Even though that plastic holder might only let you put it on one way, doesn't mean it's the right way. I've had them shipped the wrong way before. If the engine rotates clockwise, you're going to want this one-way bearing loose, going counterclockwise. You want it going the opposite direction. So you get it on here and it's going the wrong way. You want to take that plastic piece, put it back on here, and then slowly bring your bearing up. Slowly. You do not want to lose your little needle bearings in there. Once that's on there, then you can pull it out, flip it the other way, and put that on. But this is going the right way. Then you're going to want to put your other washer on. Install your spacer, some Loctite on there. We'll install our other half of the clutch. Take this back up. of course, always check your service manual on that spider nut. Most of these require over 200 foot-pounds of torque. I did forget to mention, if you're in here and these buttons are worn out at all, replace them. These are in very good shape. There is no play in them. Could throw our limited spacer on there. Our spring and cover, make sure we put it where you marked it. Now these bolts did not come from the factory with Loctite. However, I like to put a little bit of blue Loctite on here just so they don't loosen up. Now you want to make sure this cover is pushed down and push it down the best I can. Hold it. I'll come in here, tighten it up. Now I don't tighten it up with this, I just snug them. Always torque your bolts down. Now at that point, this is ready to be installed back on the machine. Not on this one because transmission's still got to go back together. I get everything back in it right now. Show you everything's working. We'll put it in park. We're in park. This is locked. This is free. We'll go ahead and put it in reverse. You can see reverse clicked in good. Go ahead and throw it in neutral. Neutral's working perfect. Low. There's low range. High range. And there's high range. It's a little hard to turn from my fingers. Like I said, there was nothing wrong with the transmission I could see. This is the case they took off of it. So seeing as how this was off anyways, I went ahead and replaced all the seals in it. The seals probably would have been fine. However, this thing's off. Might as well replace them now. I did ask the owner first and he said, yes, go ahead. That's about $100 in seals right there just for them three. So on these transmission cases, there's no gaskets. You need to use a semi-drying liquid gasket. We go ahead and get a nice even coat around the whole thing. We do the same thing to the transmission side. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this case on here. Carefully line everything up. Torque all these bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Around, check all these. Now that the transmission's all bolted back together, I have not heard this thing fire up yet due to the transmission being apart. So I'm about to fill her up with some AGL and then we'll try to fire her up. Because I definitely want to make sure that engine runs good before I go any further. This is the fill plug here. Now empty transmission is going to use a full quart of this AGL. Get her filled up. Get over to this pump bottle, makes it easier to put in. Go ahead and install our plug now. Check the oil. It's perfect. When the owner dropped this off, he dropped 2 quarts of PS4 550 and a filter, so we're going to use that when this is done. Let's see if she fires up. Hopefully. So it did have a battery in it. I charged it, and it was enough to turn it on, but it would not take a good charge, so we do have the power steering light. Let's try to fire it up. Oh yeah. Not bad at all. Sounds pretty good. We do have the power steering light on now, and the power steering's not working. Okay, so she runs. Let's get her back together. Now, I absolutely do not love these jobs. Now, when this thing got here, it was all torn apart. Everything was torn apart. This is what I really do not care for. I mean, obviously, it's a drive shaft, but just a box of bolts. At least they're in a box. But when I take stuff apart, I label everything, put them in separate baggies. So this is going to be fun. So I got to find the 4 drive shaft bolts and a box of bolts. Luckily, I've done enough of these 550s and 850s to know that these are the drive shaft bolts. So now I just got to find all 4. Hey, look at that. They're all in there. Let's set them over there for now. Winch controllers, clutch puller, transmission mount. Couple more transmission mount bolts. Now I gotta find the 10 bolts for this inner clutch cover. I know these are the outer clutch cover, so we'll get rid of those right now. No, this is the primary. So we'll stick that in there. This is for the secondary. Along with this, usually there's a lock wash or two. We'll find that after. These are for the inner clutch cover right here. There's 10. We'll go ahead and throw our drive shaft on right now. For this inner clutch cover, there is no gasket, just needs a bead of silicone. Go ahead and throw that in there. Secondary goes on. Now our primary with the new one-way bearing. Lug nuts are already loose. Throw our clutch cover on. Into frame support. Go just like so. Bolts, bolts. Throw our tire back on. All right, let's slap a seat on here. Time to make sure that transmission's operating properly. It's definitely a little dark out here. I didn't realize it gets so dark so early now, but now we're in low range. Power steering light's still on, so something's going on with that. I can shift it right to reverse, no problem. Kicks right in. High range, perfect. I didn't notice it before, but that handlebar is definitely bent down really low. This thing must have been rolled at one point or something. There's something happened to this. Also, the brake handle is just hanging in the wind, and it doesn't have any front brakes. It's got rear brakes, so that's good. Shift's nice. Get her back in the shop. Have to give it a good test run tomorrow when it's daylight out. I've been driving around the Sportsman 550. After the transmission reassembly and the clutch fix, everything seems to be working fine, other than the power steering light's on and the power steering's not working. Also, we have no brakes. Talked to the owner. He said he wants those fixed, so let's go look into it. First thing we're gonna check is the fuse and the relay. As you can see, our EPS fuse is right here. That's the electronic power steering, 30 amp. Yep, so somebody's got a 10 in there. I bet that thing's blown. Actually, no, it's good. Go ahead and put a stock 30 amp in there. Go ahead and put a 30 amp in. I don't think this is going to change anything because the fuse actually looked good, but we'll try it. Everything you do, you should always check to make sure it fixed it or not. Still no power steering. Still got the code. This right here is our EPS relay. Let's go ahead and pull it out, see if she's corroded. It does have some corrosion on it. Let's clean them up. Clean that up. Cross our fingers. So first thing our manual says to do is our battery fully charged. Yes, almost 13 volts there. We already determined our fuse is okay. I swapped relays. Am I getting 12 volts at the fuse? Yep. Going across the other side. Yes. This is the power connector that goes to the EPS unit. Right now I'm going to check ground. So checking continuity. This is the ground side. We're good there. I'm going to go ahead and flip it back over. Switch on. Go ahead and check that. Yep, so we're getting power to the EPS unit. Go ahead and plug this back in. Next it says to check for 12 volts across pin 3. Which is 1, 2, 3, this orange wire, 2 and 3. And we have 12 volts there. Now, after going through all them steps, the only thing that the service manual says is to consult with Polaris Digital Wrench. I do not have Polaris Digital Wrench. I hate failing, but I failed at this one. I'm not done yet, but I'm done for now. Let's move on and get some brakes on this thing. So we have 0 pedal. Let's check the fluid first. Empty. So do we have a leak, or was it just leaked out because this master cylinder was loose and just hanging there? So let's go ahead and bleed it. I certainly found the problem with the brakes. We got a huge hole right there. So I'm gonna have to get a new line for that, and I'm gonna keep messing with the EPS. I couldn't sleep at all last night knowing I never figured out exactly what was going on with this thing. So to recap, this is a 2009 Polaris Sportsman 550 with EPS power steering, and the bell is illuminated, and we have code 520-230-31. Obviously, the power steering does not work at all. So I checked my fuse. Fuse was good. Cleaned the relay contacts. Relay's working fine. I checked for good ground and good power going into the EPS unit. That was good. And then on the communication side, you need a constant supply of 12 volts when the key is switched on. I had it, so that's good. Which leads me to think that power steering unit is bad itself. But I've also heard of these ECUs losing the programming, and you need to get them programmed. Well, unfortunately, I do not have Polaris Digital Wrench, so I cannot hook up to this. I can hook up to it with my Tech, which will give you any of the engine codes, but EPS units, it does not read them at all. So that kind of bites. Anyways, 11 o'clock rolled around last night, and I couldn't sleep. So I come out here and messed with it some more. Started checking powers. Everything checked out. So I decided that it was the power steering unit. However, I'm not going to tell the customer that I'm 100% sure it's the power steering unit, because those are very pricey, unless I know for sure. So over here, I have a 2014 Polaris Sportsman 850. This does have power steering on it. I stole the box last night, brought it in. That 850 was in a bad wreck. Tweaked the frame pretty bad, so that one's definitely parts machine. So here's the power steering unit off that 850. This one's obviously still in here. So I went ahead and got it plugged in. Come around, turn the ignition on. No power steering light. Check this out. Turns very, very easy. No power steering light. When I say there's no power steering light, that's a malfunction light. Very easy to turn. This power steering box works. That's good. Had to do that, otherwise I wouldn't be able to sleep last night. So yeah, I did all that, and I don't know if the owner wants this box or not. I just did that for peace of mind, so I can tell him 100% sure that I know that power steering unit is faulty. This machine is drivable without the power steering. It just turns a lot harder, obviously. He's planning on plowing with it, so I think he wants it fixed, but I gotta ask him, because he's either got to buy a brand new power steering unit, a used one, or he can buy that one off me if he wants. At least I was able to sleep last night. I talked to the owner. He would like that power steering fixed, so let's go ahead and remove that power steering box. That's the only problem when you get into stuff like this. Now I notice the rotors are very, very worn. Pads are pretty much non-existent. So does he want that fixed too? I don't know. One thing at a time though. Sometimes you can't fit power tools. That's the broken line right there. You can see my fix here. Temporary, of course. I just made sure I could get some pedal back by pinching that off, and I did, so that's good. Alright, there's the tank. Now I got some room. Thought I was going to be able to get it without pulling the tank, but it won't come out of there. There we go. This is the original. This is off the 850. This has got a different mount, obviously, than this power steering box, but other than that, they look identical. I'm going to examine this one a little bit, tear it down, see what went wrong. I'm looking at the connectors to make sure they weren't bad. I couldn't see it in the machine. They all look good there. Remove the mount. Do not open. No user serviceable parts. Get in here. Now our motor leads are actually checking out okay. 0.2 over here. 0.2. And these two. 0.2, 0.3. That actually checks out okay. Okay, so the motor actually ohmed out good. It could be any one of these little circuits here on either one of these boards. I'm not seeing anything that's sticking out to me. Sometimes you'll see a burn mark or something, maybe right there. A little hard to say. So I'm guessing it's somewhere in this circuit board. I'm sure somebody could fix it. I sold this used unit for 200 bucks. They're like $1,000 new, so I think 200 bucks is a good deal. You know, it's definitely not new. It's been sitting outside, but it obviously works. I mainly tore that apart because the owner wanted to see what was going on inside, and you know, I was kind of curious too. So anyways, let's get that known good one back in here. Some fresh Loctite on there. Put this mount back on. I'm not going to use impact on this because I don't want to jolt this at all. So I'm going to put these in by hand and then torque them down. So these do need to be lined up. You can see there's a notch right there. And in the steering stem, you can see there's a notch cut out right there. So we line that up with that. Throw a little grease on these splines so it slides in nice and easy. All right, in we go. And same thing on the top here. I don't know if you can see there's a notch right there. You line that up with this line. Just like so. UPS units all installed. Time to put the tank on. Plug it in. Okay, so I got a problem. I had to pull the tank back out. I don't know if I had to, but I did. So the power steering's working. I'm not putting any pressure on them handlebars. They want to turn to the left. You can see I took the headlight off here. So if I pull the steering stem off, the power steering stays where it should be. It does not try to turn at all. Thinking what's going on, remember how I said this is bent? This is very bent. Somebody definitely rolled this or something, which is kind of weird because the plastics don't really show it, but they must have hit something over there. What I'm thinking is this steering stem here from the power steering box up to the handlebars is bent, which is putting extra torque on that, and it's making it turn. We're going to have to replace the steering stem, and we might as well do the handlebars at the same time. I'll go look at the 850s over here, but that was in a pretty bad wreck too, so I'm guessing those might be bent. I don't know. We'll find out. As you can see, this one's already torn down. Looking at the handlebars, they look fairly straight, much straighter than those, but the stem, I think, is what we really need. Hard to say. I didn't bring any tools. I'll have to pull all this stuff off. You know, it looks fairly straight, surprisingly. I'm going to go try it. Out with the old... Absolutely bent. Look at that curve on that thing. This is mine, much straighter. So I know everything's just hanging here, but let's try her out now. Check those handlebars out. Power steering works good. So what's going on with that? The EPS is a steering assist. So when it detects too much resistance, it'll help you steer. So that steering shaft bent, what it's doing, it thinks you're trying to turn, but the bottom's not turning, so it's turning for you. So with these EPS systems, everything's got to be working just so. All right, let's get this Sportsman 550 drivable again, get some brakes on it, and we'll do a little service. These pads are shot. Middle on middle right there. Those look a little better, huh? And these ones on this side are obviously not a whole lot better. This is the side I got to replace the brake line. So these ones were a little better, actually. There was some brake pad material left on them, at least. We'll go ahead and put these new pads on here. These are just cheap pads. I wouldn't recommend putting anything super expensive on here with how bad these rotors are. This line is definitely not the easiest one to get to in here. I guess I wasn't thinking it would have been way easier to change this with that power steering box out. But I was able to break it free with the wrench, which is good. This old one out of here, and we'll go ahead and put this new one in here. Well, used. Let's go ahead and get some brakes on this thing. There'll be a lot of air in those lines. We'll bleed the rear first, seeing how it is the furthest from the master cylinder. And yes, this is a master cylinder. This is the rear master cylinder, but this is where you bleed for your front. Looks like fluid to me. We'll move to the front where I replaced the line. Good pedal now. That was a close one. We're almost at fluid. Fill her back up. I did bleed this side as well, and there was no air in it. Perfect. We got a perfect pedal. I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this thing and try her out. Drop her down. Look how easy that thing turns. She's torn apart, might as well do a service to her. So underneath here we got an 8mm hex. Out with the old. We'll reinstall our plug. Get some oil in here. New oil filter. Yep, I'm pre-filling it. Let's get that back up in there. Over our dipstick. Now these things only hold 2 quarts of oil. Nice big filler hole in this one. Brakes are working perfect. This thing steers super easy. Obviously don't have it completely back together yet because I want to try it out, make sure everything works before I go ahead and throw all the fenders on it. Actually, I got another 550. Let me show you the difference. This thing is just super easy. So this one is a 2012. As you can see, there's no power steering box, just straight steering stem. Now obviously in 2012 you could still get the EPS. This one just didn't come with it. Oh. Actually the gauges are a little different on this one too. This one's like an analog. It's still digital, but it's analog versus that one. I haven't fired this up in a while. Fuel injection, it just fires right up. This has got a problem with the front diff. Like, I mean, this thing is heavy steering. I'd probably break the handlebars if I tried to just reef them without that thing moving. This one, on the other hand, I mean, it's a one-finger thing. It turns super easy. Of course, tires are definitely different there, but I gotta fix this thing up. I do like the 550s. My wife actually loves these things, and she wants me to keep this one, but she wants power steering in it. I'll probably buy the aftermarket steering kit for that thing because, you know, I could have threw this power steering box in that one, but then I'd have to, I don't know if the wiring's the same. I know the ECU would have to be flashed for the power steering. All right, let's finish this Sportsman 550 up finally, and then I'll give you a price breakdown of the repair. Fenders going on. Put the taillights up. Support bracket for our rack. Our rear rack. Footwell, another footwell. Our heat shield. Our side panel. So close. I got most everything back together. Missing one piece right here. I might have it where he dropped it off. I don't know. I'll have to go check. Sweet. I found it. See, that's the only problem with getting stuff torn down already. Parts are just everywhere. You know, this thing came to me in a box of parts. Fenders just sitting everywhere. Between moving it from where he dropped it off into the garage and then back when I was waiting for parts, it's hard to keep track of some of that stuff. That's why when I tear it all down, I kind of keep it all to one pile. It just makes things easier. She's getting close. All right, got her all finished, got her cleaned up. She looks pretty good. There's a few scratches on these rear fenders and stuff, but this thing's actually in pretty nice shape. All right, let's give this Sportsman 550 a little run here. All right, so high range. This thing is just ridiculously easy steering. It's almost too much assist on these older Polaris Sportsmans with the EPS, but it's very nice. These Sportsman 550s, I want to say 850s because that's what I've drove the most, but these Sportsman XP chassis ride the best out of anything I've tried so far. The suspension is just, it's great. I mean, there's nothing special about these shocks. They're Polaris shocks, but they go great. Now, this one's set up a little stiff on the front because they were plowing with it, so it's cranked up as much as it can go here. We'll throw it in low range. Keep tool drive for now. I'm going to try out this all-wheel drive system. Got a fairly steep bank up here that is kind of off camber and stuff. This thing is just super smooth. I certainly miss my 850. I bought a brand new 850 back in 2014, and that thing was just a beast. Alright, so we are certainly gonna need four-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive. It's an all-wheel drive system. So let's see. These tires are not the best. But I think with the weight and yeah, it's gonna crawl right up it. I'm actually gonna go down this because I want to show you the active descent control. It's crazy how good that active descent control works. Alright, so we made it up. Let's go ahead. I'm not going to use any brakes going down this hill. This is a fairly steep hill. I don't know if it shows up on camera or not, but definitely steep. So we're in low range, active descent. No brakes, and this thing is just crawling. Very, very nice system. You never weigh your brakes out if you use it right. It's just amazing. So watch, I'll take off the active descent, and it kind of goes faster. It still has engine braking, but that active descent just slows you down even more. Yeah. She catches speed pretty good. We're doing what, 43, 44, 45 right there. All right, so first we'll go with the parts. So the transmission seals were $72 for all the transmission seals. That primary clutch one-way bearing was $45. We went with an aftermarket, not OEM. Charged them $30 for a used brake line. A brand new one's $60, so I figured half price was good. The new battery was $65. The front brake pads were 20 bucks. And then usually there's always a shop supply fee. And what that is brake cleaner, shop towels, anything I use like silicone, stuff like that. Now almost any job will use some shop supplies, but that price could be as low as like 10 bucks between everything. This was on the high side, 50 bucks. Of course, I used a couple cans of brake clean to clean out that transmission. Used some sealant to seal up that transmission. A lot of cleaning on that transmission. It was torn apart, and I think it was torn apart for quite a while. Pretty dirty in that thing. And then I realized that power steering didn't work, and I told the customer, told him the price where we were at. He was good with changing it. I sold him that power steering box for 200 bucks. The total parts costs were $482. I billed for 4 hours of labor to begin with before the power steering. That was another 2 hours at $85 an hour. It's $510. So the total bill for this, $972. I forgot I also did a service to it, engine oil and an oil filter. I didn't charge for that because he actually brought it with him. As far as the AGL and the transmission, I couldn't remember if I supplied that or if he actually had it. He couldn't remember either, so I never charged for that. That stuff's pretty expensive, but I'm not gonna charge him if he brought it. So anyways, that's the bill on this one.